it ends up becoming weirdly almost religious with people who are that gatekeeping. Becomes a bit like medieval times again, and like witch hunts, and
because the best way
that
of course
person
not
looks a bit weird, therefore they're going to be burnt at the stake, or that person said something mean against me, therefore I'm going to say that they're a witch, and it is interesting. You can see how it devolves very quickly into mass hysteria and like loads of mistrust and speculation and all sorts of stuff.
But it's also that societies find ways of handling that. The witch hunts ended, partly because the church wasn't terribly keen on them, actually. In fact, in the Middle Ages, after all, you would be burned at the stake for calling somebody a witch, because the official church position was that witches actually can't have any power. So claiming that somebody bewitched you is just a proof that you are a heretic.
Yeah.
And then we got a rule of law system and evidence rules. And I'm pretty certain we're going to handle the same thing with our current crisis in reputation and trust. We're going to come up with something. Maybe not necessarily the nice and sane thing, but societies do find this thing.
Yeah.
But that is in itself, of course, an interesting challenge. As technology shows up new possibilities, we are going to get various part of our values and what is super important unsettled in various interesting ways.
Absolutely. Like, one thing with Homo Deus as well that they say at the end, that it's going to be interesting to see whether there's going to be any new religions that end up coming out as a result of technology. And I think it will be interesting to see whether there will be anything, because a lot of things, like even things like going back to the privacy thing, I think some people could even almost see it as a religious thing, that they're just so open and have so few secrets that they'll just put everything online, and it's because they're a divine being almost, that.
Or a bit like the Puritan mindset that we are not going to have any curtains, both because curtains are kind of slightly vanity, but also everybody can see that we are a good family and everything we do happens in the open. And then I have some other friends who think that everything should be encrypted, including my mind. But I still don't think that necessarily is enough to build an entire religion on, because a religion comes from religare, binding back. You want to have tradition, you want to have a social links and meaningfulness, and maybe you want to add a bit of spiritualism and mysticism, but that's a bit more of a choice. Most people who are religious want to get that connectedness. So transparency as a religion, yes, the transparent people can deal with each other in an easy way, so that might help them a bit, but I think you need some extra social structure to really make it go as a religion.
I don't think it would be quite there just yet, but I think something along those lines, I can imagine it happening, and I can see it happening as like a potentially that somebody could come up with it and be like, okay, cool, brilliant, that's going to be something new, and I think that could end up causing some havoc. And then like you said with the thing about people not trusting things and coming up with a solution to letting people trust things again, or coming up with something like that could almost be seen as like a omnipresent being that people could then attach meaning to, that like for example, if you produced some sort of computer network that would only be able to tell the truth and would not be able to lie, so kind of similar to a blockchain that you have with what's it called, with Bitcoin. You have the blockchain, which is basically this document that once you put information into it, you can't alter it, so it can only be the truth. it, like, once it's in there, it cannot be changed and altered and edited. And I can kind of see that being used in a semi-religious way as well.
Yeah, I think there is a real reason to think that we might get more techno-animism, regardless of whether we get a religion out of it. Certainly we're talking to more of our things, and they're talking back to us. And even the things that are not explicitly talking are sending us signals, participating in our life, and having their own little inner life. While we have been talking here, of course, my computer have been kind of popping up little messages that it's loading updates. My phone is kind of doing its own things, and probably around the house, various little things are going on. And this is, of course, very similar to the traditional idea that, yes, there are souls in everything. And once you have the Internet of Things, well, there might not necessarily be spirits or souls, but they're going to be these little programs that are going to have a kind of autonomy on their own. Some of them you want to appease and understand how to deal with. How do I make my microwave oven behave itself? It's got a peculiar personality.
Yeah.
The smart fridge might be secretly hacked by Chinese hackers and be up to no good on the internet. Do I need to care about it? Now, the interesting thing is, of course, that this gets very complicated when some of the algorithms are affecting our life. So my husband, he's a left-leaning Swedish social democrat, but he's also interested in American politics and computer games. So occasionally when he watches YouTube, the algorithm starts sliding him over into the alt-right swamp.
Yeah.
He just notices that it's constantly pushing him into ever more extreme and nasty stuff. At that point, he responds by watching a lot of left-leaning stuff, very explicitly to de-bias the algorithm. This is just a habit that is emerging because, well, that's how you do it. It's a bit like people develop habits around the cars and other things. And I would imagine that we might end up in a world full of these systems that we do all sorts of strange things to appease them, to bias them, to negotiate with them. Yeah. It's not exactly a religion, but it's kind of everyday superstition. And some of it is accurate, and some of it is actually just total superstition.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and especially as the YouTube algorithm is constantly changing as well, that you could be doing something that you think will make it lean back the way that to what it usually is, but actually you could potentially be making it worse or just not doing anything at all. Like, I know that with researching into future technology and all of that sort of stuff, if I feel like I can't use YouTube anymore for it, because it will take me into the conspiracy theory route, and these people online being like, it's going to be the end of the world, I'm building my doomsday bunker, I live in the Midwest, and I've been stockpiling guns, and that is the way how it always takes me. If I've been looking at anything to do with future technology on YouTube, it will take me down that rabbit hole, and the end point is always like these really hardcore people who are like stockpiling their dried goods, and they're like, I'm ready for the nuclear winter. And you're going, oh my god, usually I'm watching drag queens on YouTube like doing makeup tutorials, and now all of a sudden whenever I go onto it, the only thing that they have is like 10 things that you'll need to survive the apocalypse. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake. It's so annoying.
And it's very funny that many of our technical systems have these properties. So there is this slightly older game where you just click on the first link on every Wikipedia page, and you always end up at philosophy eventually.
Yeah, and or Hitler.
It's basically the same thing. The Wikipedia's issue is, of course, what you're doing is this transformation where your algorithm, you have some interaction, and when you apply it again and again on it, you basically find the biggest eigenvalue. That's mathematically what's going on. And it might be that the biggest eigenvalue for Wikipedia is philosophy, and for YouTube it is kind of alt-right.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think it is because as well, alt-right people produce so much content, and people dogmatically watch it, and it's kind of this echo chamber of everybody shouting, producing stuff and shouting and watching each other's stuff, and Whereas
So I was talking to Jaron Lanier last week. I don't know if you know him. He used to be the great guru of virtual reality, and now he's kind of a general intellectual about the internet. He's great. He's annoying in some ways, but
how do you spell his name?
He's got his head screwed on right, I think.
How do you
Jaron Lanier. And now he's at Microsoft Research, apparently also helping people build quantum computers. Anyway, he was giving a brilliant talk about everything that's wrong with the world today and how he was present in meetings in crappy dorm rooms that led to it. And indeed, he actually had a pretty good case that discussion he had with Eric S. Raymond in a crappy MIT dorm room in the early 90s led to some things about open source that led to a lot of good effects, but later on, when it interacted with another little meeting he had with some young people who started a company named Google, also led to some very bad interactions. And his basic argument is that as long as you have an ad-based internet, then engagement becomes the important thing. You will always try to maximize people's engagement, so you're going to go for something that gives you a strong gut reactor, flight or fight.
Yeah.
And that is basically why YouTube goes wrong in such a weird way.
Yeah.
Now,
It's quite...
I think one can... sorry?